Yeah, I wanted to do a quick video on placing the brakes and the rotors on my Polaris RZR 900. Pretty simple stuff. Obviously, you got to take your tire off first. Some of these lug nuts are pain. I've put on my own ones. But what you need to get is a breaker bar. And you also need to use your, depending on what kind you have, this is a 6-spline lug nuts, and this actually goes into the right groove of those 6 splines and makes it easy. Then on the end here, I have a 3/4 bit here to go on, and then that's just a matter of turning it to loosen it. Always a good idea to get in there with some PP Blaster or something else if it's not coming off easy. Let it soak, let it sit for a little while, because it took me one tire I just could not get off, and it took me probably let it sit for a day with that on, and then I just used the breaker bar to take it off. And once you get it off, you're more or less going to have one of these in your hand. You can see I've already gone ahead and put the different rotor on it, but when you have the wheel hub off, this is also a great time if you want to take a good look at your wheel studs. I've had to replace quite a few. These ones are in pretty good shape, but if you wanted to, now is the time when you're going to be able to get them off. You can soak these as well and just hit them with a small sledgehammer, like a 2 or 3 pound sledgehammer or something like that, and they will come out pretty easy actually once you get the rotor off. To get the rotor off, that was the only other challenge that wasn't really clearly explained here. These individual screws, I actually broke one off and had to get a whole new wheel hub piece there. So best thing to do is take your handy torch. Not hard to do at all. They use some heavy duty Loctite type stuff in there. It's the red stuff. So you need to get in there, and I just fire it up right all around there. It's usually right at the top. Right at the top area there on the inside is where they have it. So in order to get those off, you're going to have to fire it up on each individual of those 4 stems. Do it one at a time. Don't do all 4, heat it up, and then do it. I mean, it cools off quickly. Then you're able to take it off. And of course, the stock one, just your regular round one. There's nothing wrong with this one at all. In fact, it only has a couple 100 miles on it. I'm going to keep it, use it as spare parts, and next time I have an issue or something, I know I've got a spare one here to be able to keep track of. And you can also notice the symbol to line up on there for which part goes where. It's not as important with these rotors because this one doesn't have the same symbol on it, but that's what you get. And then over on the inside, if you're going to do basically a brake job, again, these ones don't have a lot of time on it, but you can see I wanted to remove these brakes. And as soon as you have the wheel hub and the tire off, and you got your rotor and your disc and everything off, this piece just clamps right onto it. It clamps on right here, and it has an extension piece there which goes off the end. I'll show you putting it back together. And of course this piece as well, which is just a protective guard for that bit to not get in there behind the wheel. So next I'll show you how to go ahead and do the brakes. So as usual, I'm taking the lazy man's approach to all this. I don't want to disconnect and have to re-bleed my brakes and all that kind of stuff with the brake fluid there. So I'm trying to do this basically open hood, if you will. You can see in here, there's normally 2 of them. I just put one in just to show you real quick. There's one brake pad in there, right? You can see where it is. And then these little pistons, basically, or caliper parts, put it together. You get 2 of them, and they squeeze together when you're in between the disc rotor, basically. So to take these off is not hard at all. You can practically just shake it off here, but you just want to shift these down. You can see it's on an angle here, so it makes it a little bit difficult. And I'm trying to do it one-handed. You want to put these down all the way, but you also want to make sure that you have compressed. You got to push down on that piece there, make sure it stays nice and compressed, and then you can go in very quickly here. I'll try and do it with my hand. You can just basically push it off on both sides, and then it should just snap right off, and there's nothing. You might need to angle it a bit, but it shouldn't be a difficult thing. If you're pushing down on this all the way, those should just come right off. So for me, I've gone with the whole race-driven set. They've got a good set for the 900s. For the most part, I think brakes and rotors, I mean, it's not an exact science, but for the most part, I think if they fit a 900S, they're going to fit a 900 trail, for example, and this is, of course, a 900 trail. So if it doesn't list it, the easiest thing to do is go and check on the OEM parts list. You can find one. There's a couple of, like Rocky Mountain, places like that have a OEM parts list. Go and see at the 900S for the same year if it's got the same OEM part number for the rotors and the brakes for the 900S as the 900 Trail. That'll tell you right away if you can use the same ones. And sometimes even the 1000s, believe it or not, at least on the brakes. There's only a couple of parts that they share in common. Many different types of brakes and what materials they use, I'll let you research that and figure it out on your own, whatever works for you. For me, these race-driven ones came as a kit with the special rotors. Alright, so I'm going to put these new individual disc brakes on, or excuse me, the individual brake pads themselves for my race-driven, and this is the kit number. They have different ones for the front and the rear, but they're the same side to side, so you need 2 sets of these ones and 2 sets of the rear ones. It's pretty self-explanatory. Generally speaking, if they've got this kind of cover plate on the back, there for the front, for whatever reason, and on the back I didn't have those, at least with this race-driven set. And so putting them on, we were showing before how we just kind of compress these, compress both sides here, just to push it down all the way. And it's just as simple as sliding it on. So, and if it's easier, do one side first. And put that side on, no problem. Come around, make sure this is compressed all the way up here. If it wants to work with me. There you go. You just push it up and push it down. That's one brake pad on, and the other one go on facing this way, so the pads are facing each other. Alright, so I got the old ones off, I put the new ones on, see how they are. Now of course it's gonna, between this is gonna go the rotor, so when they squeeze together it applies pressure on both sides. So this is just a matter of reassembling the whole piece now. This has to go on after you put back on the rotor. So I'm going to go ahead and put that piece on, and then you get a better view. So now I'm going to put this back on. I've replaced the rotors. I've checked my wheel studs. They all look fine. They don't look all stripped out. So I'm done with this piece for now, and I can go ahead and put it back on, which is not hard to do. You'll notice there are grooves on the inside there that are going to line up basically over here. Alright, you can see I've got it back on here. Alright, you can see that the individual brake pads are between the rotor itself, which is fine. So now it's just a matter of lining back up my holes here and putting the screws back in and the cover plates. You can see that all the parts we took out before basically have some kind of Loctite or something on them already as well. These are to put the caliper back on back here. These are just a regular 15, metric 15. And I'm just, before I put them back on, I'm going to go ahead and add some more Loctite on just to make sure it stays nice and snug. This is not the kind of item that you want coming off when you're on the trail, of course. So just put a little dab on, same place it was before. And I'm going to go and start putting this all back together. Last bit for the brake piece. Some have it, some don't, but this is a cover piece, kind of a guard, really. And these just have 2 screws. You can see they just go in there. This is not a big problem. I just use my drill with the T40 bit in it, and it goes in pretty easy. The last bit you got to do is the 2 washers, the nut, and the cotter pin. With the 2 washers, you can see which one faced inward before, because it'll have a bunch of grease on it. Which one faced outward because of the amount of dirt on it. Thicker nut. This is a 1 1/16, so if you're struggling to try and get it off, I couldn't use a wrench. I just had to go and buy a Craftsman 1 1/16 inch for this nut. And you're going to have to prop it on something, because the front wheels are going to keep moving on you until you get them in there. So the best thing to do is just kind of prop it up with a piece. I was using my breaker bar before, and I'll probably just show you how we do that now. So once you have it on good and tight, and you can see where the lineups are, I haven't turned it all the way around. That blue piece on the top there should line up with the top there. You can see on the inside, I just wanted to, for demonstration purposes, it's got those holes and grooves that go all the way through. And we want to be able to put our cotter pin in between that, just so it doesn't fall off. So as long as it's on mostly tightly, the cotter pin will do most of the work for you. I'll just go ahead and thread that through, push it in the other side, take a handy pair of pliers, and just twist it back over. There. No, nothing's getting off that, and it's not falling off either. We should be good for now. So now, we can just go ahead and put the tire back on. Let's see, brake job done. Looks pretty good. So one other very quick small tip, if you're a goon like me and you've got a bucket full of parts, enough so that you could probably replace an entire RZR, less the engine, it's good to keep them labeled. I might need to use these again. So in this case I've got front driver side. I put the mileage, so about 200 miles, and the date that I replaced them. As you acquire more parts and more things, you're going to want to differentiate them, or for instance you only did your front and not your all fours, you might want to do that. So I'm just going to add this to my pile of stuff here, and I'll be able to get at it easy.